talk about some of the theories of supervision, specifically how we're going to be supervising adults in early childhood education programs. So in this lecture, I'm going to talk about some of the theories of both management and supervision. This class is specifically concerned with supervision, but I definitely bring in a management aspect to it as well. I don't think you can have quality supervision without management. I don't think you can have quality management without supervision. I think they go hand in hand. All of us will have different qualities, strengths, but I think you need to know theories of many different things in order to effectively lead or supervise a program. I'm also going to be introducing some of the ways that we work with adults, different types of learners, and new ways of approaching curriculum and communication, and then decision making as well. I think decision making is a big part of communication and how we work with other adults. So why are theories important? And I think I shared last week when I was introducing the class that this class has very little child development theory in it. This is a 134. This is not a 100 or a 115. We've gone over Rothenbrenner. We've gone over Piaget, Erikson, Vygotsky, Gardner, all of those types of people. Maybe you don't remember the complete theory, but I say those names and you generally know the theorists that I'm talking about and generally what their area of focus was. Was it social emotional development? Is it language learning? Something like that. But in the same way that we use the theory of Vygotsky or Piaget, we're going to use theories to back up the work of management and supervision that we're talking about and apply it to the field of child development. So in some of my other classes, I teach quite a few management and supervision classes. Some of my other classes, I bring in financial theory. I mean, we're talking about markets, we're talking about renting space, we're talking about the actual financial aspects of working in programs. So I bring in things from tax code and stuff like that because that deeply applies to the work that we do when we're running our own programs. So same with here, I'm going to be talking about other fields. How do other fields look at management? How do other fields look at supervision? I've become more interested in Facebook. I don't actually have a Facebook profile. I don't actually like it from a social media aspect, but I've been reading more and more about how Facebook is doing some of the work that they do, specifically in hiring more diverse like computer coders and things like that, knowing that they need more people of color and they need more women who are coding, or just giving them input on how to use it, because not just a certain amount of people use Facebook, everybody uses Facebook, and they need to be more concerned with the diversity. So I've been reading more about that. How does Facebook do that? Are there any parallels that we can do in child development? How can we make child development more diverse and more inclusive as well? So I'm going to be bringing in a lot of different theories, and then I'll also be bringing in some theories from child development works about anti-bias education, and other things like that. That's going to inform the work that we're going to be doing as supervisors of other adults. All right, so then I also have child development theory. So I just wanted to say I've been throwing out the world child development theory. Theory is really just ideas, concepts, and principles. And that's why I can bring in Facebook's theory on diversity, and that's why I can bring in tax code theory, something like that. We can pick and choose. We don't have to stay in our lane in this field. We can choose from education. We can choose human development, communication. We don't have to just stick to one thing. If it works for your program and it leads you in a certain direction, use that theory. It's going to inform your practice. It's going to help you run your school. It's also a good way that we can communicate what we do. So, or it's a good way to communicate the type of care that we provide. So when you are interviewing staff, you need to let your staff know exactly what type of program you run. Think about with parents. So if a parent wanted an academic program and you are straight up project regio, the parent is probably going to not want to enroll in your program. They're going to be deeply unhappy. They want them to sit down, do workbooks, do worksheets. You might think I can educate this person, but really at the end of the day, if that's specifically what they want, they might be served better at a different program. They're not going to be happy if their child comes home covered in paint. They're not going to be happy with this. They're not going to be happy with that. Same with hiring staff as well. I think, I taught in a Montessori. I sent my kids to a Montessori. My mom reports that as a child, I did not do well in Montessori. I did Montessori for about a month. I was deeply unhappy, and she took me out and she put me in a regular like church Presbyterian program where I got to run around and be a little bit more wild. So I did not do well as a child in Montessori. I can teach that way. I see the benefits and the strengths of it. I see some vulnerabilities as well with the practice of it. But at the end of the day, it served one of my twins really well, and my kids went to a loose Montessori program. But I knew when I went to work at that Montessori what I was getting involved with. I knew that it was when I worked there, it was strict Montessori, and I got trained in how to do it. I understood what it was. There are some things that I necessarily maybe wouldn't put in my own program, but as an employee, I was willing to do it. So with you guys, you need to know child development theory to communicate to your employees. If they cannot do Montessori, if they hate Reggio, why would they work in a Reggio program? If they don't believe in the core fundamental theories and practices behind why we do Reggio, why would they work there? And that's why the process of hiring someone is so important. It sets your relationship up on a good foot. So an example, if I'm a director and I provide play-based program with a strong basis in Reggio and ecological theory, so Brough and Brenner's theories, I believe that children learn by interacting with their world, with their own languages, and with culture in a supportive preschool environment. Being able to say that and to communicate that to the people that I'm eventually going to be working with is a very, very important thing. We need to make sure that they can provide education within the philosophy that I have chosen. So the theories behind. So once again, I am a big believer in both management and supervision. In this class, we're primarily going to work with supervision. There is a lot of overlap though. When I'm talking about management, I'm talking about planning, I'm talking about control of the process of how we work. So that's a lot of external focus. So how I work with parents, how I work with children, the policies that I write, making sure that those policies, procedures, and rules are implemented every day. So I have a health policy, I have health procedures, I have a daily health check, and then I go ahead and I jump over to the other and I supervise how people do that on a daily basis. So management is the writing of policies, it's the writing of procedures, it's making sure that you have all the systems in place to set it up well. So if you have a daily health check, do you also have little papers that the parent has to sign off on? I've seen that in some programs, some it's just an informal looking at. I've seen programs that have a more intense daily health check, and the parent and the parent and the teacher talk about it, they both sign it, and it stays in the child's folder. If that's how your program is, management has a big focus in that. They are making sure that that is written well, that there are no typos on it, that the parents and teachers have been trained. The teachers have been trained in how it's going to be done, and the parents then have been told that this is a new procedure or this is what happens when they enroll in the program. Then we jump over to the supervisor, and the supervisor is there on a daily basis. They are making sure that that daily health check is being done how management and the supervisionary team have decided they want to have the daily health check done. So instead of looking at parents, looking at the world, looking at policies, procedures, writing, meetings, things like that, you are looking at people. You're looking at how people work specifically, giving people instructions on what needs to be done, monitoring to make sure that it is done well, and then holding them accountable for specific results as well. Holding them accountable, if you do not do the daily health check, these are the consequences that might happen. So they're internally focused as well. They have a lot of responsibility for implementing the manager's decisions throughout the work of staff. In some programs, there might be both a management person and a supervision person, and they work as a team together on a daily basis. Sometimes in military childcare, which I did work on, there was like management, there was a director and an assistant director, and then there was a supervisor, and that's kind of what I did. I was a training and curriculum specialist, so I was in the classroom a lot. I did a lot of training of staff. I worked with challenging behaviors, and I wrote curriculum and handled children with special needs. I could do both. If I had to, I would sub for the director and the assistant director. I was trained in how to do that. I could do payroll. I could write policies. I could write procedures. I could have meetings with parents. I can do all of the management things, and I knew how to do both, but I was primarily a supervisor. I'm going to be realistic that many of you are doing both. You might be in a really small program. You might be in FCC where it's just you. Or you're just starting a program where you are the janitor, the cook, the float, the assistant director, the director, and you buff the floors on the weekend. I've been there as well. So you have to do both of these. You're going to need to identify, do you want to do both? Is that that's your passion, is combining them? You will eventually want to get to a place where you're just a manager and you work in collusion with a supervisor, vice versa. It's up to you. You need to know the program that you work for. You need to know your goals as well. But I would always recommend that you can do both jobs. You just have strengths in one or strengths in the other. You realize and have gone through a process of self-reflection, and you know which areas that you need to work on and which areas you've already kind of mastered. So management theories, once again, is just really about managing a program. So ensuring that goals are met. So children are supervised. We have provided educational experiences. Staff are paid within those educational experiences. You might need some art materials that have thus been ordered by the manager. Children are supervised. So the schedule has been made. When there are 55 children on the playground, there is enough staff out on the playground to supervise them. A schedule, payroll, all of those things have been done by a manager. Once again, the supervisor implements the program, those policies, procedures, and rules that have been written, and they go through and they assess the implementation of what we want our staff to be doing. So most people on a daily basis are doing both. You are scheduling, you are doing payroll, you are ordering the things, you're also getting into the classroom, you're meeting with them. And specifically, if you're a program director and you're doing multiple sites, or that's a goal that you have to look at all of these types of things in the sites that you're working at. All right, so examples of management and supervision. So there's a policy for how children are supervised properly, and then the ratios that we follow as well. Information about ratios and how they're implemented is given and explained, and the supervisor observes on a daily basis to make sure that it's implemented. So your staff has been told it's a 12-to-1 ratio. Or on the playground, these are our tricky areas when we need to have staff positioned so that all areas of the playground are adequately supervised. And then the supervisor does spot checks, so they walk through on a daily basis and they make sure that those tricky times of drop off or diapering or playgrounds are being adequately supervised. Part of management as well, this is an area where there's a lot of overlap, is later in the class we're going to be talking about the ECHRs, the environmental rating scales, and this involves a lot of supervision. You're working with your staff to do the environmental rating scale. It's also a lot of management as well, planning of when you're going to train somebody on the environmental scale, organizing times in order to do it, staffing appropriately so that you can have meetings about the environmental rating scale, leading, saying, look, we're not going to be jail for kids. We're not going to be really low on our scale. We want to be high. This is where we want to get. We're not there yet. What can we do to get a high scale score? Then monitoring and assessing as well. And that is really kind of a big part of the environmental rating scale, is assessing where you are and then leading to get to a better place. I also want to talk about some relationship-based professional learning. That's really the ideas of mentorship, coaching, and supervising. This is really, really important as well. And this is kind of some of the work that we're going to be doing at the beginning of the class. What's the difference between a coach, a mentor, and a supervisor? What's their overlap? Where are the areas that they're different? And how do we have relationships with adults in order to teach them, specifically to help them, to support them to be better teachers in the classroom? So it's all about the relationships that we have with other people. Part of that as well is, how do adults learn? You know, if you're looking at Howard Gardner's theory, once again, looking at multiple intelligences, we know that there are different ways that children learn. And in a really great classroom, you're seeing the little child that can't sit still at the circle time being enveloped within the classroom. He or she is supported in different ways that they can get some of their wiggles out, or how they can be supported in moving their bodies within our circle time. Same thing happens at our adult learning and adult supervising as well. People are going to take in new information. They're going to learn about your policies. They're going to be supervised in different ways. How can you identify the different ways that people learn, and how can you communicate with people who might have different backgrounds than you? For me, I was not raised with my grandparents at all. They lived back east in Ohio. grown up in Southern California, so I didn't see them very often, and there weren't a lot of older adults in my life as I was growing up. So I didn't really understand the lifespan development when it came to kind of a professional aspect, how older adults learn and do things differently in a professional way. It really kind of came to a head when I had a lot of amazing older adults who were volunteering for my program. And they were volunteers, so I had some supervision of them, and we'll get to how we supervise volunteers later on. But at the same time, I really had to allow them the freedom to work in the garden at their own pace. And the times that they came in, there was a lot of flexibility. They're retirees, you know, their schedules are much more flexible than it is in professional space. So that was something where I have a very specific background. I didn't know much about older adults, and I needed to work with them, that people who were maybe 50 or 60 years older than me, who were retired. How do I work in those types of aspects in order to have these fantastic volunteers who were mentor or master gardeners, making me this amazing on-site garden. So thankful for them, and it really taught me a lot in how to work with older adults, but it wasn't something I knew before I kind of went down that road. Also striving for diversity and inclusion, and I'll talk more about that next week, specifically inclusion as well. And then when we are working with people, there is going to be conflict. I wish I could tell you, if you do all of these things, you'll never have a fight again. People are people are human, people are messy. Sometimes we're going to have conflict, and when we are engaging in a process of change, you sometimes can have conflict as well. How do we manage that and be professional about it as well? All right, so communication and decision making, we're going to talk about, you know, for many of you, maybe this is the process of getting your site supervisor permit, so you can be an assistant director or director. So you're now having to make the switch into communication from leadership. Or maybe you are still a teacher, but you are taking on more of a leadership role within your classroom, or as a mentor teacher, or maybe you're already a program director and you're just coming back for some additional information. There's lots of different ways within a system that we are leadering, when we are communicating and making decision-making depending on the position that we have currently. So sometimes you're getting communication from leadership. Maybe there's a larger owner, a program director. Maybe there's a board of directors. Maybe there's an assistant director and you're a mentor teacher, or maybe you're a mentor teacher talking to your staff. How do you have open communication and then also engage a process of decision-making while also staying a leader? So how are you open? You want to hear the feedback from others. You want to involve others in the decision-making process while also knowing that you are the leader and you need to propel a program into a growth mindset and to learn and to change and remain relevant. So within communication, a leader is going to set the climate of the program. And I deeply believe in a respectful workplace. The reading that you guys had this week is called A Great Place to Work. I think that's key. The place, you know, people always laugh, like, my husband has a work wife, I have a work husband, you know, things like that. Like, the person that I spend 40 to 50 to 60 hours a week with sometimes is deeply important. Maybe you don't have a work wife or a work husband, but maybe you have a place that you work and you want it to be nice. You don't want the Sunday scaries. You want to get out and you're happy. Oh yeah, I get to go to this. I'm going to a conference. I've got a meeting. You know, maybe you're not that jubilant about going back to work on a Monday, but you're not like super bummed that you have to. So I think that a respectful workplace where people want to work is the biggest part of adult supervision. How can you remain professional and respectful and set it open so that with open communication between everybody, they want to work there? Types of communication as well. How staff communicates to your supervisor, and we're going to discuss this a lot more. How do you have open communication? How do you have a process of decision making? I'm just introducing it, but how do you set up review and feedback sessions? What about questionnaires? What about reports? Do you like the grapevine? Do you allow people to gossip? Do you not? Is there no break room? There's lots of different ways, and there's lots of different theories that we can look at how adults learn and how adults communicate and set that up for success. And then decision making as well. It really is a process. I know that's kind of like a term that people use and throw around too much, the decision-making process. But it really is, and if you involve lots of adults in decision-making, it gets harder. If one person is just, this is the decision, everybody else does it, the process is very easy. It's one person just deciding. The implementation can be quite hard if people don't agree with it, or they don't want to do it, or they think it's a stupid decision. Then you're going to have some adult supervision issues. But if people are involved in the decision-making process, it can be harder. But if you have consensus and most people are agreeing with the decision, or they're being brought into the process, they typically like that, even if they don't like the outcome, then that's a key kind of part of adult supervision. Okay, so each week I'm going to give you more information about the assignment in the PowerPoint like this in the video lecture. So this is a way, sometimes it's its own PowerPoint, so if it's a larger assignment, I will do a separate video that just talks about it specifically. If not, it will be at the end or maybe in the middle, somewhere within the PowerPoint, I will give you more verbal information on the online assignment. So this week is, what type of leader are you? So there's a little tiny, like, funny YouTube video, and then there's also a reading that you will do, and this is going to help you decide what type of leader or leaders you are. Very rarely one of us is just one thing. Typically we are a mix of different types of things, and that kind of informs how you are a leader or a supervisor of people. So we're going to start off with kind of a process of self-reflection, look at the funny little video, do the reading. It's a page and a half, I think. It just tells you all the different types of leaders that have kind of been identified in this particular theory. And then just you write, I'm very pace setting, but I would like to be collaborative, or something like that. Like, what, maybe you're having a hard time with decision making. Maybe you let everybody run all over on top of you, and as a supervisor, you don't have a lot of respect. Whatever it is, engage in that process of self-reflection, because that's really going to help us as we go into coaching and mentoring and working with other adults. Knowing who you are is going to help you work with adults later on. All right, so in conclusion, in this lecture this week, we kind of learned about theories of supervision, how we work, how we communicate with others. And we'll also in the future be looking at team building, reflective practices, how we make decision making, and that in the long term is going to make us a stronger leader, which will allow us to supervise adults better. All right, thanks so much. I will see you in another lecture.